So that's it. I'm getting rid of my little Blueberry, my faithful little run raw car that got 38 miles a gallon. It runs perfectly with over 200,000 miles. But the frame got rusty, being here in Vermont and driving pretty much every day over the past 11 or 12 winters. So they wouldn't inspect it with a rusty frame. So even though it still runs well and has maybe another 100,000 miles in the engine, gotta let it go. I'm taking a few final moments here in the car before I head out into a rather cold, blustery day here on the Kelley Stand in Sunderland, Vermont. I had to drive north to get some supplies at a store that we don't have in town. So I'm about 15 miles away from my house, which normally I'd come here all the time to run. I love the Kelley Stand. It's a pretty magical place, but with the current constraints in all of our lives now, I find myself barely driving at all other than to the studio or back, or maybe a trailhead in Bennington or Woodford, but driving 15 miles seems really luxurious at this point. So as I'm sitting here, I'm reflecting on some thoughts I had before I left. I was getting my clothes ready to get dressed to head out here, and feeling my way through the process. I don't simply put clothes on. I put them out on the floor, lots of them, lots of different bottom options, lots of different top options. I look at them, which colors pull me in, and then I pick them up, which one feels the most interesting, and then I just start putting them on. And it's always fascinating to me how that evolves, because I notice that I don't like to put certain colors on top of other colors or certain types of fabric on top of other types of fabric. And again, I'm not consciously deciding this. I'm just letting my body, my right hemisphere, walk me through the process, and I'm observing. So it's kind of a neat experience to go through, and it never fails. I get dressed, but I don't have to tell myself to get dressed, and I don't have to tell myself how many layers to put on. It just happens. And it happens in an appropriate way, because my right hemisphere and my body are not stupid, regardless of what my left hemisphere thinks. My body is the one that's going to be out there, so it knows what it wants on. It knows how much it needs. It's not an idiot, regardless of what most pop psychology books tell you. Your body is smarter than your left hemisphere believes, much smarter. As I was getting dressed, I noticed this feeling and narrative playing out in me. And the narrative said, I have no interest in going running. And there was a large part of me, my will, my identity, that really wanted to avoid it, didn't want to do it. And nowhere in the process of me putting my clothes out was I saying, you must go run. I was simply allowing for the possibility of my body, right hemisphere, to interact with the clothing. And it was choosing clothing appropriate for a run in about 15 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what it is here in the mountains. So I didn't tell it that it had to do anything, but it simply chose that. It wasn't afraid. It was just getting ready. But this other part of me, my identity, or what some people might call the ego, was really repulsed by this idea of movement, and it had no interest. In fact, that was the statement, I have no interest. So as I've been sitting here in the car, I've been thinking a lot about that word, interest. I've been trying to get to the bottom of this part of me that has no interest, and yet this other part of me that's going through the steps happily and sensually to get me here. And what occurred to me is that I've spent a lot of time thinking about this word interest in the past. And it all came together just now. And if you look at the roots of the word interest, it comes from the Latin word interesse, which is a combination of inter, which means between, and esse, which means being. So also in Spanish, you have estar, to be. In French, you have être, to be. So they all come from this Latin esse, E-S-S-E. So the word interest really means to be between. And that's where I was in the studio getting dressed. I was between the parts of me that were taking the steps and the parts of me that were commenting and saying, I have no interest. But if we, again, go to the root of that word, I, the observer, was between these two parts, letting it happen, watching them from a distance. And isn't it interesting that we can be between the left hemisphere, narrating about the goals, setting the goals, believing that it's the one that actually follows through and executes on the goals, aka willpower or ego. And then there's the right hemisphere, the embodied part of you, the part that actually moves, the part that feels, the part that is deeply integrated into the world and into relationship. And then there is this ability to be between, to observe, to notice, the middle path in Buddhism, or mindfulness, where you are non-judgmental of what is going on in your narratives, your monkey mind, and what is going on in your body and your feelings. You're there between. Now, if I believe that I'm only my left hemisphere consciousness, if I believe that I'm only my ego or my linguistic narrative identity, then I'm not going to be able to find that middle place which allows me to engage the other side of the equation, the movement. And I'm going to retreat into a safe territory, the devil that I know. I'm going to come up with a linguistic excuse or justification for not engaging. And it may be positive or it may be negative. I don't want to, it's too cold, I'll do it later. Or I'm useless, I'm worthless, I'm lazy. And that's the explanation. It's quite simple and clear. It's, yeah, I'm just a lazy person. And then I can go feel bad about myself and have a few drinks with that devil that I know. So this word interest in this sense is useful because to me it points out the middle path. But a better description of what's going on that leads you into the next step is that of investment, to be an investor rather than an interested party. So if we look at the word invest, it means to clothe in. Vestire, to clothe. So in early Latin, this meant to clothe someone in the robes or in the garments of a particular office. You invested them. You put the special papal cloak on them, or the judge's gown, or whatever it was, the weird wig. Well, that wasn't Rome, but you know what I'm talking about. So, to be invested means to get dressed. So how do I invest in my future? By investing, by clothing my body, by allowing my body to choose how it wants to invest, what it wants to wear, what it wants to cover itself up with. So you make an investment in your future by getting dressed, quite literally. Isn't that interesting? All right, time for me to step out and feel the cold breeze on my face. Danger, vomiting dog ahead. Okay, so I just had a really interesting experience using the original definition of the word interest to interbe. I had a thought pop up that was like, oh my God, I gotta record this. This is good. Took off my glove, got out the recorder, which happens to be aluminum, and started recording with no consideration of the temperature or the wind at all, or fingers on metal. And here on top of the mountain, it's about 11 degrees and it's windy. So I'm recording my thoughts, I'm going, more epiphanies, more connections, more aha moments. And I notice my fingers starting to scream, starting to burn, and I become interested in them. there's a part of me between the thoughts that I'm having and the action that I'm taking, which is saying, you should pay attention. You should be interested in the experience of your fingers right now. But no, this thought is too important. So I keep recording. A couple more minutes go by. Now my fingers are exceptionally painful. But I don't mind. Yes, I got the message. Yes, I'm slightly interested, but not really. I'm not really in the middle. I'm pretty much biased towards this thought right now. And I kept recording because it was just too good not to. And then I got to the point where not only were my fingers so painful that it was really, really hard to bear, but I could no longer hold the recorder, and I dropped it. And I decided, that's it. Okay, I've got to take care of my fingers. I need to be more interested. I need to be more in the middle. I need to be more balanced. And the thought that got me to record this now is that when there is something that has captured us, we'll often throw our bodies under the bus for what's happening on the left hemisphere. The narratives, the thoughts, the ideas, and what's happening in the real world to the very body that allows us to have these thoughts, to the fingers that allow me to hold the recorder and push record and to hold this camera. I wasn't really all that interested in them, or should I say I was not acting in the middle, weighing both sides equally. I didn't have their interests in mind. So this is something that at first I thought, wow, this is maybe what courage is, that when we've got this big goal, this important thing, we're willing to endure pain, and maybe that's a part of it. Maybe that is what gives rise to courage. But at the same time, it's also what gives rise to self-abuse. So again, it's about balance. It's about being in the middle. There may be moments where you got to throw your body under the bus, but make sure those moments really matter. Make sure they're worth it. Make sure there's no other option, because you only get one of these. You don't want to waste it. All right, speaking of wasted, I've gone 3 miles up the mountain in my boots. I think it's time to turn around. I just finished the 2-hour elliptical session and I'm blown away. The other night I talked about watching racing videos on YouTube and how when I watch people run, it gets me physically engaged, and it's easier for me to go at a good tempo when I'm watching people run. And action films also get me engaged because there's more movement, but films that are dialogue heavy, I really feel the effort and I kind of drag. Well, I've got a new twist on that, I guess. I just watched the movie The Identical, and wow, it is probably the best elliptical film I've ever watched. But it's not because there's action, it's because there's this secret that you never know when it's going to get exposed, and there's so much emotional gravity in this film that I'm just hooked. And it is so rare that I experience that in a film. This film just really blew me away. It'd be interesting to watch it when I'm not on the elliptical machine, but holy cow, I've got a new all-time favorite elliptical film, The Identical. And the crazy thing about it, the lead actor, I think his name is Ryan Pelton. He goes by Blake Rain. It's pretty much his life story, sort of. It's a lot about who he is, and he's the perfect actor for it. And it's like his only acting role. Like, this is it. That's all he's done. And he's done nothing since. And he's incredible. So I'm just in awe, and 2 hours went by like that. I just didn't want the film to end. So now I'm noticing that emotional engagement and some secret that you're just waiting. You know the secret already at the beginning of the film, but you're just waiting And that kept me hooked. It kept me moving. I was singing through this movie. I was crying through this movie. I was like totally into it on this machine. So boom, if you haven't seen that movie yet, hop on a machine and watch it.